Everything I've done, both good and bad, I've done for my family. I've turned my back on people they thought were my friends. Now that I'm a lot older and just a bit wiser, I see that family is our greatest weakness. I'll get him, Tommy! But it's also our greatest strength.
Life is an echo. What you send out comes back. What you sow, you reap. What you give, you get. And what you see in others exists in you. Nothing better describes the internal struggle and the absolute capture of the journey and transformation of Thomas or Tommy Angelo, a cab driver who seemingly overnight by sheer chance got himself involved with the Salieri crime family, a criminal organization that was based out in Little Italy, Lost Heaven. The family was ran by none other than Don Salieri, who would personally invite Tommy into the family, an invitation Don Salieri was more than confident in, as his two most trusted enforcers, Sam and Paulie, already vouched for Tommy. Tommy had showed he was great behind the wheel. Maneuvering with such skill, he was able to shake multiple pursuers from the rival Morello crime family, and keep a level head while facing a hail of gunfire. As a modest cab driver, the excitement of being caught in the middle of a gang war was foreign and terrifying, but he was more than capable to make sure Sam and Paulie would make it safely to Salieri's bar, the family's headquarters. When Tommy was visited the next day by Morello's men who smashed up his cab, beat him, and held him at gunpoint as punishment for helping Sam and Paulie the night before, Tommy would just turn to Don Salieri for his blessing to get back at the men who had attacked him. Tommy had heart. He showed respect to the Don, and was potentially the most important, was he had use to the family as a driver or an errand runner. His initial experience with the family left him intrigued, but uninterested in the life of the criminal underworld. His punishment at the hands of Morello's men, mixed with Salieri's gracious attitude together with the camaraderie provided by Sam and Paulie, would convince him to reconsider, forever changing his life and redefining what family truly is.
Those first days in Salieri's bar were slow. Mostly we just waited. Maybe life in Salieri's crew wasn't gonna get me clipped.
Come on!
But what did I know?
The transition from being an honest cab driver to a glorified chauffeur for the Salieri crime family was one that Tommy initially enjoyed. Starting off as a cab, it was difficult to find honest work. He was one of the few who were able to do so as the country was caught in the grips of the middle of the Great Depression. His fares were far and few between, with the impact of the Great Depression being felt across all walks of life. Even when he did find fares, it wasn't a particularly rewarding job. In fact, many of the patrons would prefer him to not talk and just do his job, if driving a taxi could even be considered a real job. But now, a part of the Salieri crime family, Tommy was getting paid much better and being treated as more of an equal. By Tommy's own account, the first few years he was a part of the Salieri's family were relatively quiet, with his responsibilities being not too different than what he was doing as an honest cab driver. He wasn't a killer after all, and this was something everyone around him, including the Don himself, were well aware of. So Tommy's jobs primarily centered around running booze, delivering messages, offering protection, and collecting extortion money. Even the latter primarily saw him behind the wheel. And that is how it stood until one day a routine job collecting money from various properties that owed the Salieri family protection money went awry, demanding even more of a commitment into this new life.
And it's collection day, boys. So Tommy, you'll drive. Paulie and Sam can handle the rest. It'll be routine.
Just a handful of stops today.
Bill at the motel was a little short last month, so make sure he pays us the interest he owes.
It was collection day. Sam and Paulie were tasked with visiting some properties to make sure their tabs were paid for the month. Tommy was sent along as a wheelman as usual. As the day progressed, Sam and Paulie would teach the green Tommy the ropes, the appropriate amount of force, and the best way to make sure they got paid without inadvertently sending the person into the arms of their rivals, costing the Salieri family a valuable supporter and an even more valuable cash flow. Everything was going smoothly as expected until their last stop. It was a profitable motel just outside the city. The motel was late, but it was one of the highest paying properties, so Salieri let it slide, just expecting a little interest on top this month for the missed payment. As they pulled up, Paulie and Sam would disappear inside of the motel while Tommy waited outside by the car. This was no different than the previous stops before, so taking this moment of relaxation out in the countryside, Tommy would sit back and enjoy a smoke break. It didn't last though, as the silence was quickly broken with the sound of Polly being forced out of the front doors.
Tommy, I took one. Jesus Christ, Polly!
Tell Salieri from here on out this place is ours. Capiche?
Unexpectedly, the motel was taken over by Morello's men. Polly was shot while Sam is trapped inside getting beaten for valuable information. Faced with no other choice, Tommy had to go inside and rescue his captured brother, resulting in a firefight between Tommy and some of Morello's men. He does manage to find Sam injured inside of a room of the hotel, and as they make their way back to the car, the last of Morello's men knock the two of them over, attempting to escape with the money Tommy and his partners initially arrived for. At the insistence of both Polly and Sam, Tommy would leave his partners behind, chase after the fugitive, to which he successfully caught up with, killed, and claimed the money. With the description of Tommy being able to put down a number of Morello's men, you would think that this was someone that was quite skilled with a firearm and had no problem taking a life before, but it's quite the contrary. As a matter of fact, before this specific outing, Vinny, the head of Salieri's armory, had questioned Tommy if he had ever fired a weapon before. To which Tommy simply replied a few times at a fair, and that was it. Up until this day, he had an inkling of the darker side of Salieri's business, but his hands were never dirty, per se. He was simply the wheelman. As Sam put it, this was the Don's favorite driver, but now that he showed that he's more than capable in a firefight and saving this entire situation from falling apart with both of his partners critically injured, Tommy was well on his way to becoming an enforcer, far more than his role as just a driver, a position he would actually be in just 2 years after joining the Salieri family. By the time 1932 rolls around, Tommy would officially be a made man. He would have already boosted cars, rigged an entire race for the Don to win, and he would go on to develop a love interest with a woman by the name of Sarah. Sarah wasn't directly involved with the illicit activities of the family, but she wasn't a stranger to any of it either. Her father, Luigi, as it turned out, was an infamous hitman that decided to wind down for the sake of his daughter. Luigi would accept the position of bartending at Salieri's bar, while his daughter, Sarah, would cook and help keep the place tidy. This would make Sarah extremely knowledgeable of everything surrounding the Salieri crime family, but willingly ignorant enough to claim no part in any of it at all. She would know better than to ask questions or to fully reject the doings of the Salieri's goons at large, as it's a lifestyle that she grew up completely immersed in. As Tommy continued to rise through the ranks, obtaining more and more responsibility and respect from the Don, Sam, Polly, and even Sarah's father, Luigi would go on to request that Tommy walk Sarah home one night, as she's been getting harassed by a group of men. The group of men harassing Sarah would be very pivotal in the history of the Salieri crime family at large, but it's also important in Tommy's evolution, as it still highlights that Tommy is not a cold-blooded killer, at least not to the same caliber as Sam, Polly, or anyone else that's been in this lifestyle much longer than he has. He hasn't completely changed after 2 years, and it's a theme that will continue to pop up during moral or ethic dilemmas that he can't seem to properly come to terms with this group being the beginning of it. As he's walking Sarah home, the group of men attempt to harass her and Tommy. Tommy, making it known Sarah's under the protection of Don Salieri, is only met with ridicule. They know who he works for and her ties to the Salieri family, but they couldn't care less. A fight would erupt between Tommy and the group of men. Tommy's arm would be slashed in the scuffle, a small price to pay for Sarah's protection. The two of them would drink and spend the night together, with Sarah sharing her past experience of stitching up her father, who was frequently a victim of her mother's drunken rage. The following day, enraged by the boldness to attack someone under his protection, Salieri would demand a brutal retaliation against the men who had attacked both Sarah and Tommy the night before. Now, originally the plan was just to beat them to the brink of death with baseball bats and leave their bodies in the streets as a sign for the hell to pay for targeting Salieri's people, especially doing so within the borders of his own territory. As with all things, this hand-to-hand brawling would erupt to a full-on firefight between Salieri's men and this seemingly random group of hoods. As Tommy and Polly clear up most of the men, they would come across the two men from the night before, Billy Galati and his friend Johnny. The two would attempt to escape in a vehicle. Polly and Tommy would pursue them, eventually catching up once Billy loses control and hits a pole. As both Polly and Tommy walk up to the driver's side, Polly instructs Tommy to finish the driver off, who appears to be conscious, begging for his life.
No, wait.
Please, I don't want to fucking die, man.
Despite the monster that Billy clearly is, Tommy can't do it. So Paulie steps in and does it for him. He gives Billy one to the head, and Johnny receives one to the chest, with him chalking up that they're both dead and he's out of ammo anyways. But Tommy just stares at the dead bodies. Billy might have been a monster, but the way of ending him was too callous for Tommy to deal with. He just stares in silence, and Paulie drags him off. Despite being faced with the man who had intentions of raping Sarah, Tommy struggled to officially end Billy. It's a lesson for the entire Salieri family though. Billy, as it turns out, was the son of a counselor, and his passenger, Johnny, who was presumed dead, had managed to survive both the car wreck and gunshot from Paulie. This presented a major problem for the Salieri family. If word got out that men from their organization were responsible for the death of Billy Gigliotti, that would drive his father into the arms of Morello, putting a powerful politician in Morello's pockets. In a scramble to conduct some damage control, Sam would be sent to assassinate Johnny, who would be attending his fallen friend's funeral, eliminating the sole person capable of identifying Paulie or Tommy as the men responsible for the death of Billy. Tommy would be sent to work as a distraction for Sam's assassination plot, and he'll do so by paying a little visit to a local brothel that was originally affiliated with Salieri, but just happened to switch sides and started working with Morello. As punishment, Tommy would be sent to kill the brothel's manager and blow the building up, with the added bonus of dealing with one of the women who had been sharing information on the Salieri family with people working with Morello. It's a plan that would see even more bloodshed on Tommy's part. It would also betray another side to Tommy's character that'll come back to haunt him much later.
Gotta hear me out on this. It's about the girl.
Michelle,
Right. You don't have to rub her out. Just make her disappear.
you know her?
Yeah. Here's 100. Give it to her. And make sure she gets far away.
Okay, sir.
As it turns out, Sam knows the woman who's sharing secrets with Morello's guys. He's the one talking to her and feels guilty she would pay with her life for him simply venting. He would ask Tommy as a friend to spare the woman, give her some cash, and allow her to escape. Tommy, being the dutiful friend that he is, would oblige. He would successfully assassinate the brothel's manager, hold Michelle at gunpoint, threatening her to never return to the city again, to take the money that Sam has supplied her with, and disappear. Tommy would blow up the office of the brothel and rendezvous with Sam in the church where the funeral service is being held. Johnny would make Tommy, resulting in a giant gunfight within the church. This would lead to Tommy and some of Morello's men filling the church hall with bodies and bullets. Johnny would be successfully killed by Sam, saving Tommy's life, and the pair would go on to pay the priest to stay quiet. There was no doubt about it now. Tommy was just as deep in this life as Sam was. For the next 6 to 8 months, the Salieri family would keep their heads down. After being involved with the terrorist attack on a brothel and shooting up a funeral session in broad daylight, they were eager to not draw any more attention from the police, who were making regular visits to the Salieri bar to let the family know that they were being watched. During this time of having nothing else to do, Tommy would become reckless, spending his money at bars or around town that'll potentially attract unwanted attention. Frank Coletti, the Don's consigliere, would take this opportunity to sit him down and warn him. If he continued to be so reckless with his spending, he'll get pinched, costing him his very bright future within the family, a future that he possibly never even seen for himself. Frank would go on to tell him that Paulie isn't smart enough to be in charge, while Sam lacks the proper vision to be a leader. Tommy is different from the both of them. If he stops being so reckless, he could run the Salieri family one day, or run the entire town. It's an unusually warm moment between the enforcer and the Don's advisor, albeit shared through a pretty cold analogy. It's advice Tommy would sit on and keep in mind.
We were still making good money. And with the Don worried about keeping the heat off, we didn't have much to do. Except drink, have a few laughs. Every time I went into Salieri's, there was Sarah.
1933 to 1934 would be both business as usual with the Salieri family, while Tommy went on to continue to develop and deepen his personal friendship with both Sam and Paulie and his love interest with Sarah. 1933 specifically would be a year where Morello would slowly move in on Salieri's businesses, while the Salieri family continued to keep their heads down, avoiding the attention of the law. Now, war between the two families would be off for another year or so, but Morello wasted no opportunity to further weaken Salieri, and he did so by moving quietly at first. A few trucks would randomly go missing, a top earner would suddenly disappear, a regular business would randomly close up shop and move across state. It wasn't until one specific night where Morello being responsible for all these unusual circumstances was brought to light. Tommy was sent along to help out Sam and Polly to oversee a shipment of whiskey coming in from Canada. Sam was meant to deal with handling with the contact and meet with them just outside of town at some farm. Polly was tasked with overseeing the shipment into the city, while Tommy was just simply an extra pair of eyes to help out Polly.
That bastard is just 3 sheets, and I'm wrecking a new suit for nothing. I swear I'm gonna kill him. Here, just in case Frank was right.
Right from the moment they reached the point where the whiskey was meant to change hands from Sam's responsibility to Polly, something wasn't right. Sam was nowhere in sight, and the pair weren't receiving any answer from their attempts to get his attention. Worried something may have happened, they would get out of their vehicles to go investigate. Tommy would eventually stumble onto a truck that was standing idly in the middle of the road. When he goes up to get the attention of whoever's inside, he quickly discovers the man behind the wheel is part of the Canadian crew meant to meet up with Sam, and he's also dead. Before Tommy can even think of what to do next, he's ambushed at gunpoint by 2 men. Without hesitation, Tommy would deal with both of these men. Interestingly enough, when he discovers a few moments later that the men that caught him off guard were police officers that are crooked and working for Morello, Tommy got visibly nervous, commenting how they didn't inform him that they were officers or how they made no other attempt to let Tommy do anything besides open fire at them.
They must be in Morello's pocket. This bastard. He can't even let us have this one racket. Forget about it, Tom. We gotta find Sam and get out of here.
At first glance, it seems like somewhat of an adequate response. He just killed police officers, and the United States doesn't exactly have a history of going light on anybody that deals with someone working for the badge. But when you take into account that he nervously rubs his neck, unsure of what he's just done, and he stares at the bodies even more, now he's developing a little bit of a pattern. He did the same thing with the exception of rubbing his neck when he was staring at the body of Billy Gelati the year before. It appears Tommy has no reservations at dealing with anybody that's in the same criminal life as him, but when he's dealing with someone seemingly on their own, regardless of how much of a monster they are, regardless of how crooked they are, it's not so black and white all of a sudden. Polly and Tommy would continue to venture deeper into the farm to look for Sam, who was holding off a number of more of Morello's crooked police officers. Polly and Tommy end up making their way over to Sam, who's been shot and critically injured. The two of them successfully end up taking Sam all the way back to town, to the house of a doctor that's on the Salieri payroll, allowing an emergency surgery to be performed to save Sam's life. Now this is important to note, this technically will be the 3rd time Tommy has saved Sam's life. He did so the first time they met each other, where Sam and Polly hopped into his cab, and he promptly made sure that they made it to safety at Salieri's bar. He did so again when Sam was locked inside the motel that was taken over by Morello's men, and he was beaten for information. And now he did so one last time on the farm where Sam, without a doubt, was critically injured, facing multiple of armed men. It's a testament to his loyalty to his friends, those he deems family. Right after this close call, with so much death and uncertainty of this life he's caught in the middle of, Tommy would go home to Sarah and ask her to marry him.
You're late. Dinner's cold.
Work. Marry me.
Okay.
This entire scene is quite somber. Upon his arrival, Sarah is upset that he's late to their planned dinner. He distantly replies by just saying work. He's visibly shaken, to which Sarah removes his coat and finds it's completely drenched in blood. He almost lost his partner. He almost lost a buddy tonight. And now he's getting closer to those most important to him, as Sarah says she will marry him. While Tommy strengthens his relationship with his fellow enforcers, a friend that arguably saved his life in an entirely different way would be caught within his crosshairs. One day, Tommy is suddenly called to a park to meet with the Don, who claims there's a mole within the family. He spent all night thinking about who it could be and why. So he went to find the books, since Frank wasn't around. The Don discovered not only the books, but Frank was missing. He wasn't returning any of the Don's phone calls, and Frank, his wife, and his kid weren't at home. It appears Frank has betrayed them. The man the Don knew for more than 50 years. The same man who took the time to set Tommy straight, to think and do what's best for him within this life, was running, and he had all the evidence to put the entire Salieri family and its associates behind bars within the books that he took. Refusing to stand for any type of disobedience, let alone taking such a crucial part of the Salieri family, the Don will send Tommy as a hitman. His job is to retrieve those books that Frank has stolen, and once those books are within his possession, to then kill Frank. It's a difficult request, as Tommy's still in disbelief at Frank's apparent betrayal. Tommy would then go around and ask some local rackets within Salieri's territory if they've heard or seen anything unusual. As it turns out, the FBI's in town. There's a rumored deal that has been brokered between the FBI and Morello by Counselor Giolatti, and there's someone of interest being protected at a safe house in the area of town known as Oak Hill. Tommy would quickly head there to find Frank and his family have been in protective custody here and are on their way to the airport to leave the country. Tommy would tail them, manage to successfully sneak into the airport and catch Frank by surprise before he boards the plane. Frank would tell Tommy why he had betrayed the Don. He'd hand over the key to a lockbox at the bank downtown, and he accepted his fate. As someone who's been in this life for over 50 years, he knew what Tommy had to do. But Tommy, sympathetic for Frank's wife and daughter, spared his friend. Nothing here was as black and white. Frank was tired of living this way, constantly looking over his shoulder, checking underneath his car to see if a bomb has been strapped to it. Morello came to him with a deal: give him the Don's books, and his entire family would be spared and allowed to leave the country.
Christ, Frank. Why didn't you ask us for help?
I guess I just wanted out, one way or the other. I'm tired, Tommy. Tired of lying to my wife. Tired of checking under my car every time I take a Sunday drive. And tired of waiting for the dawn to put two in my temple.
Tommy would glance over at Frank's cowering wife and daughter, and he would allow Frank to get on the plane. To really sell the idea that Frank was killed, Tommy would go on to burn down Frank's house. He returned to the Don with the books, who wouldn't ask any questions. A funeral would be held for Frank, and according to Tommy, the Don would never speak of Frank ever again. Tommy would be praised as a hero for saving the books, and he would go on to marry Sarah sometime in 1934. Around this time, the two would also have a daughter. Tommy's family was expanding, but he'd never forget the wise words of Frank or the close call of almost losing his brother Sam.
Tom, we kill Morello in public, in front of the city's creme de la creme. Then they'll all know who's in charge. And it doesn't matter if you have a badge or a gavel or a fat wad of cash in your pocket. If you cross Salieri and his boys, you're dead.
As they say, let he who wants peace prepare for war. After years of working in the shadows against each other, the war between Salieri and Morello would soon explode into the public's eye during the year of 1935. With Morello failing to successfully acquire Salieri's books despite the defection of the most loyal man to Salieri the year before, Morello would take the initiative, sending a group of armed men to kill Salieri while he's out having lunch in broad daylight, launching the war between the two families past the point of no return. As a retaliation for the failed hit, Tommy and Salieri, who narrowly escaped with their lives, would track down the Don's personal driver, who was responsible for Morello knowing exactly when and where Salieri would be the day the hit was greenlit. After a brutal personal beating at the hands of Salieri, he would then go on to send Tommy aboard a cruise ship to deal with the politician Giolatti that has been working with Morello since the death of his son. While it's worth at least highlighting Tommy infiltrated the private party posing as a sailor, a testament of how successful Tommy has become as a hitman over the years, successfully killing the politician, Tommy's own personal struggle of what calls for him to be ruthless or remorseful will pop up again when it's time to deal with Morello's brother, Sergio. Sergio was a very vital asset. Besides being Don Morello's own flesh and blood, Sergio was his top earner. He controlled the unions and ran the docks of Lost Heaven. Any goods being imported into the city went through Sergio. This man was also coined as a quote-unquote lucky bastard, as he has successfully escaped multiple assassination attempts on his life. But it was Tommy that was going to end this streak and rip the rabbit's foot that's hiding deep within Sergio's pockets. Tommy was also going to do this in the most dramatic way possible. He was going to plant a car bomb very snugly underneath the underboss's car. He actually held no reservations about this. His one question was, is it safe to carry the bomb around?
It's safe to carry.
Yeah, just don't drop it. Shake it, smoke near it. Yeah, it's safe. Boom!
Tommy would make it to Sergio's house. He would manage to successfully plant the bomb underneath the car, but in one final show of pure luck, it wasn't Sergio that was killed by the bomb, but his wife. As Tommy waited in anticipation for his target to be claimed by the present he had waiting underneath his car, he surveyed Sergio's house from a phone booth across the street. He talked to his wife Sarah of plans for the weekend, seemingly having no care in the world, until he noticed a woman leaving Sergio's house making her way over to the vehicle. Initially piquing his curiosity, as she inched closer to the car, Tommy was becoming more and more fixated on the woman. This wasn't excitement, this was pure panic. As she got closer, Tommy would make a desperate attempt to get her attention any way he could, damn near completely giving himself away altogether. He tried to spare the woman who never even noticed him, a level of oblivion that unfortunately would result in her going up in smoke. Tommy, in a pure panic, would call Vinny, the man who gave him the bomb. Vinny would completely disregard Tommy's panic, telling him accidents happen. Whatever happened, happened, don't worry about it, but Sergio has been found. Sam and Polly are going to catch him at a diner on the other side of town, and if Tommy hurries, he can join and help him out. Tommy acknowledges this, but that fixated stare, eating at him of what he just did, makes its appearance yet again.
You need to get over there fast.
Okay.
When Tommy eventually arrives at the diner, he is still clearly shaken up by the whole ordeal. His conscience is eating at him. He killed an innocent woman, a bystander of a war that she probably had nothing to do with. Whether if she did or she didn't, that still wasn't the target. He wanted to talk, but Sam and Polly told him snap out of it. They handed him a Tommy gun and said now's the time where they gotta deal with Sergio. As they make their way into the diner, Polly would announce the famous Salieri sends his regards, getting ready to kill not only Sergio, but a waitress that he's using as a human shield. Tommy would briefly snap out of the denial that he's in and stop Polly from opening fire, saving the woman. He sacrificed a quick and easy job in order to spare an innocent bystander. Whether if he did manage to kill Sergio's wife or not, and if that bomb job did go sideways the way that it did, I don't think it's really relevant. Just him willing to get in the way and stop Polly from opening fire shows that he's not as callous or as cold-blooded. He never really was on the same caliber as Sam and Polly were. Sure, he's gotten more and more involved, invested in this lifestyle, becoming a much more efficient hitman, but he still has somewhat of a moral compass. Taking out a very high priority target of the rival family is not so important to him that just anybody can be killed, even if it came at the cost of one single life. Considering as the war started to heat up, Salieri became more and more consumed with the idea of killing Morello and taking over his businesses. Had Sergio escaped because of this particular action of Tommy, it would have been interesting to see if anything would have happened to him. If nothing, just the verbal reprimanding that would have been headed his way. Regardless, the action of saving the woman only bought Sergio a certain amount of time, albeit not much. Tommy does eventually manage to hunt him down and corner him inside of his own warehouse back at the docks. Tommy showed mercy and regret when it comes to people outside of this life. Sergio, on the other hand, was handed no such mercy. Tommy will pull out his lighter, have one final exchange between him and Sergio, and throw the open flame at him, who was surrounded by gasoline and flammable barrels.
What did I tell you? No one can touch me.
You ain't that lucky, bastard.
Wait. No!
It's a high level of ruthlessness that is later repeated with his brother Morello. With Sergio gone, and Morello being squeezed into a tighter and tighter box, he went into hiding. As he went into hiding, Salieri's men continued to take over more and more of his rackets. The town was slowly falling into Salieri's control, with every property being brutally fought over and being ripped out from the cold, dying grip of Morello's influence, with the final blow being handed to Morello himself. Salieri would catch wind Morello's getting out of hiding to host a charity party. Paulie, Sam, and Tommy would be positioned outside the venue with Tommy guns fully loaded and ready to go. The plan was for them to open fire upon Morello as soon as his identity is confirmed. It's a pretty straightforward plan with the intention of broadcasting to the city's elite, who would undoubtedly be present, that Morello's time is long gone. Now this is Salieri's city. As Morello is making his way out of the party, he notices Salieri's goons headed towards him. He quickly climbs into his own vehicle, resulting in a car chase that led all the way to the city's airport, where Morello had an airplane fueled and ready to escape the country. Realizing this would be their one and only opportunity to end the rivalry here and now, the engines to Morello's plane would be shot out by the trio, resulting in Morello's plane crashing. The trio would come upon Morello, who barely made it out of the plane crash, if you can even call it that, but he's quickly dying. Tommy puts a fully loaded magazine in his Thompson and unloads the entire mag into the body of Morello, an action that even leaves Paulie speechless.
Bastard's dead, he doesn't even know it yet.
He knows it now.
Yeah, pal. That'll do it.
And with that, the war between the families officially ended.
What good was all of Morello's money if it couldn't protect him from a regular Joe like me? Cabbie, for Christ's sake. It only got him one thing. A great big bullseye in his fucking forehead.
With Morello gone, Salieri would consolidate his power within the city. No longer having any rivalry to even consider as he made his moves, Salieri would do whatever he saw completely fit, and he would do so unchecked. This was a power that left Tommy with a feeling of uneasiness. He was the man that pulled the trigger on the infamous Don Morello. Morello was the man who had the entire city in his pockets, and all that power, all that money, could do nothing to stop a simple cab driver from getting to him. This criminal life, the lives taken by Tommy, both deserving and regretfully, have all started to take a toll on him. Morello's power did nothing but get a giant bullseye on him. Tommy tried to convince himself he was smarter than Morello, and he wouldn't find Paulie or Sam turning on him, destroying their friendship to get ahead the same way Salieri and Morello did the previous years. Far from ready to give up the good life of being inside Salieri's good graces, he would just push his uncertainty to the wayside and continue to do his boss's bidding. The year would start off with Salieri looking back towards the politics of the city. A local politician by the name of Turnbull has made pledges to crack down on organized crime within the city. Salieri deeming this man as a hypocrite and someone that can't be trusted, since while he's making promises to crack down on illegal activities, he secretly has an affinity for prostitutes and illegal brothels. Salieri would enlist the help of Tommy to silence this hypocrite once and for all. Turnbull's holding a press conference on an island, and it would be difficult to personally get to him. However, there's an old abandoned prison that could be easily used to oversee the entire event. Tommy would be placed up in the perch of the old abandoned tower and take one precise shot at Turnbull, silencing him completely. This would be one of two major events throughout 1938, leading to Tommy no longer being a part of the Salieri crime family. The action of assassinating Turnbull did a number of things. On the surface, it just goes to display just how efficient Tommy's really become as a hitman. He's placed as the one to take down Turnbull because Salieri says he's the best shooter that he has. A far cry from just a few years ago when he'd only fired small revolvers at fairs. Now he's made it really big time to the point of being able to launch full-on assassinations of political figures. This assassination initially was also a move that Tommy held no reservations against. He saw Turnbull as corrupt. However, when it's revealed to him by Sarah that Turnbull was more than a corrupt politician, while he may have had his demons and he may have been a hypocrite, he was still vital in pushing forward the 19th Amendment, putting his entire career on the line to give his wife and his 6 daughters the right to vote. The same right that Tommy's wife and daughter are now able to enjoy. It's another blow to Tommy's blood-soaked hands and heavy conscience. Turnbull, aside from his political career and vices, was a father and a husband at the end of the day. The same thing Tommy was when he walked right back through the front door of his home. I think Sarah puts it best here.
He gave me the right to vote, Tom. Gave it to his wife and 6 daughters, too. Guess nobody's just one thing, are they?
Guess not. I gotta go to work.
She strikes a chord that has already been quietly playing in Tommy's conscience.
The cigars are just a cover for a shipment of hot ice. The smuggled diamonds have been hidden in some of the boxes. The feds haven't found them yet.
We're stealing diamonds from the feds?
Don't worry about it. I've already discussed all the details with Sam here. He'll fill you in.
This job to bring back some smuggled diamonds will be the end to everything. The entire thing is suspicious from the start. Salieri sets up a job for Sam, Paulie, and Tommy to retrieve a shipment of cigars that are being guarded by the feds. Tommy would make it known that smuggling in a cigar shipment seemed a little bit beneath them. They are running the entire city completely unopposed after all. To which Salieri comments he always knew Tommy was intelligent and reveals the real job is to grab some diamonds that'll be hidden inside of the cigar boxes. The cigars themselves are just a front. He gives the main orders of grabbing the diamonds but leaves the finer details to Sam to inform the other two on. For anyone that knows the outcome of the story in hindsight, it would feel as if this would be the moment Sam separates from his former friends, as Tommy was visibly shocked that Sam had already discussed this job with Salieri without anybody else knowing. Nonetheless, as the trio make their way over to retrieve the customs truck and paperwork that'll allow them to get inside of the warehouse to find what they're looking for, Paulie expresses his discontent with this life. He wants out. He's tired of living like this. He's getting older, and he has nothing to show for anything that he's done as part of the Salieri family. He's been casing a bank downtown and he plans to hit it. It'll give him the right amount of money to leave behind the family and open up his own honest pizzeria. Sam and Tommy are both quick to express their opposition to the plan. A bank hit would never be approved by the Don, and doing so behind his back would only result in all of them getting killed. Paulie, just as determined, says the Don won't care of his betrayal so long as he gets his cut after the job has already been done. Tommy, equally feeling the pressure of the life, is unsure, while Sam is quick to announce he wants no part of any of this, but he promises he won't say anything to the Don no matter what the decision is. Whether if they go through with the bank job or not, he will stay quiet. It's a heavy conversation and a thought that has to be continued later, as now it's time to do what the Don has sent them to do. Tommy would successfully locate the cigar boxes. The trio would load them up, and as soon as they begin to leave, the alarm is sounded, resulting in them being chased through the city. They do manage to escape, but a couple of the cigar boxes are broken up. Fearing the diamonds may have been lost during the car chase, they'd open up the box to discover it wasn't diamonds smuggled in the crates, but drugs. The very thing Salieri's promised years ago he'd never peddle to his own people. The Don lied to the three of them. It was the ultimate betrayal. Before they went out, Tommy voiced his concerns of being caught doing anything against the feds would result in a life sentence. Finding out it was all for drugs, a type of poison Salieri promised to never get involved in, it was a perfect way for Paulie and Tommy to lose all faith in the Don. It would be the very move that'll push them to go ahead with the bank job, which they successfully pulled off. The money that they managed to get away with would be kept at Paulie's. In the meantime, the two of them would lay low. Tommy would go home like usual, and the following day he would wake up early in the morning. He would tell Sarah he's planning a vacation, that he's coming to a little bit of money, and he wants to enjoy it. He tells her to pack her bags. He's gonna go over to Paulie's and he'll be right back. Sarah, being astute as always, points out it's a little odd that him and Paulie are all of a sudden flush with cash, and now he wants to leave town for a few days. He's not going on a vacation, he's running.
What's the point of making a buck if we can't spend it?
That ain't it. You're moving, even when you're standing still. Yeah, you're nervous about something. Probably you don't even know why yet.
Well, that must be it.
He knows as long as Salieri may potentially find out what he and Paulie did, neither one of them are safe in the city. He heads over to Paulie's to gather his take, and both of them split town, but sadly, it's too late. The Don had already discovered what the two of them had done. Paulie had already been killed. Sam would call Paulie's phone as Tommy's still inside, pretending to warn him before anything happens, but while he may be too late to warn Paulie, he can at least save Tommy. Sam and Tommy agreed to meet at the city gallery, where Sam would promise to give Tommy a little bit of money to help him, his wife, and his daughter disappear. Upon arrival, Tommy would discover it was all a setup. When Tommy walks in the city's gallery, he's held at gunpoint and disarmed by Salieri's men. Sam appears and tells Tommy that Don knows more than just the bank job. Salieri knows Tommy let Frank live all those years ago. He knows that he spared Michelle, the woman from the brothel Sam had asked to be spared, and he knows that Tommy helped Paulie hit the bank. Sam admits to being responsible for killing Paulie and even rejects the responsibility of Michelle being allowed to walk. He said he may have asked Tommy as a friend, but Tommy made the decision to let her live. This business of theirs has rules. Tommy has to deal with the consequences. As Sam begins to walk away, he gives one of the best lines in the entire Mafia series.
Goodbye. Don't let him suffer, boys. He's my buddy.
Against all odds, Tommy would kill all of Salieri's men, including Sam, who begs for his life, promising in exchange he'll tell Salieri Tommy's dead. As a way to tug at Tommy's heartstrings, Sam begins to reminisce about the good old days. He tries to tell a story about them two and Paulie, but as soon as he says Paulie's name, Tommy kills him, symbolically putting two in his head the way Salieri instructed them to do if they wanted a job done right.
We sure had some laughs, right? Remember that time? Me, you, Paulie.
Tommy would go on the run with his wife and daughter. As his money began to run low and he became exhausted from constantly looking over his shoulder, he'd contact a detective, Norman, the man in charge of solving the death of Morello, a case that's gone cold without any potential leads for 3 years now. Tommy would meet him in a diner and begin to share his involvement with the Salieri crime family, including how he's the one that killed Morello. Detective Norman would have made his career right there, but there was no evidence for anything to stick, or so it seemed. As it turns out, Tommy has Salieri's books, the ones Frank took back in 1933, 5 years ago, the same ones that has everything they'll need to put Salieri and his associates behind bars, and Tommy would gladly give them to Detective Norman in exchange for the safety of his wife and daughter. It's a deal that succeeds. Salieri, along with everyone else Tommy has ever had a close relationship with or worked with, from Vinny to Ralphie, the family's head of armory and the man in charge of their fleet of vehicles, would all be put away. Tommy himself would be forced to do 8 years alone. Finally released from prison in 1946, he's relocated to the city of Empire Bay in a new house with a new identity, just as his wife and daughter had. Tommy would be given the pleasure to walk his daughter down the aisle and give a touching speech on family, how he's returned from a life of fear and death, how he did the right thing and made it out of the other side and survived. But the haunting words of Sam would return. This life has rules. What you put out into the world will come back to haunt you.
That keeps us from falling over. When we're too tired to take another step.
Mr. Angelo.
Yes.
Mr. Salieri sends his regards.
From a cabbie to a mob enforcer seemingly overnight, life in the Salieri family gave Tommy the chance to meet Sarah, to have opportunities and a sense of power otherwise he would have never known. He killed for the family. He betrayed for his family. He was ruthless and he was remorseful. In the end, Sarah and his daughter was safe. He got to see his daughter grow old and walk her down the aisle, and he accepted his fate so they wouldn't be a target anymore. In the end, no matter how you look at it, we're never just one thing.